All right, it's another round of Loud and Unfiltered, and this time I am joined by Chris Kelly. Now, Chris Kelly has got a resume as long as a CVS receipt, but we're really going to be focusing on his current band, Hillhaven, today. But we'll kind of venture off into some other areas as well. But Chris, man, how are you doing today, my brother?
Doing okay, man. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing great, man. It's awesome to have you on. I told you before that I was I was turned on by you guys on Sirius XM Octane, and Sycophants was on, and as soon as it started, I was like, whoa, because my commute is like 30 seconds. I live a mile away from work, so getting a full song in is next to impossible. So it came on right when I turned the car on, and when I got to work, I sat there and listened to the whole thing. I was like, "Holy shit, who are these guys?" And what's going on with them? And that's kind of what started the whole thing. But you've actually got more music out since Sycophants came out, huh?
hmm Yeah. Well, first of all, that's awesome. Thank you. Octane and Vinny in particular, the programmer over there, have been really, really awesome, really supportive. Which is, I think, probably pretty uncommon for like a newer band.
Yeah, yeah,
Just obviously, like, real estate on any type of radio is it's not invaluable, right?
right, yeah.
So the significance of that is certainly not lost on me. So I really appreciate, obviously, that you dig it, and that they have been so supportive so early on in this, because I don't know that we'd be doing quite as well
Yeah.
if they hadn't been, so I'm really grateful for all that.
Now, before we talk more about your actual music and everything, let's give it a little history on the band. You kind of you kind of come from a variety of different different backgrounds and bands. Obviously, you and Rick with the Ice Nine Kills connection, but how did all the guys come together? What was the whole situation like when forming Hillhaven?
Sure. Yeah. So, as you touched on my relationship with Ricky. He and I have known each other for over a decade at this point, or yeah, at least a decade, I think. Because we both, for a while, were taking sessions out of a studio, and it used to be in Lancaster. Now it's in Lidditz, but same general area of Pennsylvania,
Got
called Atrium. And that's where, like, the most, I think probably the most notable client that they have is August Burns Red. I think they've done
yeah,
the last, like, decade of their releases. So Ricky and I kind of both cut our teeth production wise with those guys.
right,
And actually, the very first tour that I ever did was stepping in for Ricky's old band, This of the Apocalypse.
yeah.
And that was the last tour that Toda ever did under that name. So basically, like, a good portion of my touring career is Ricky's fault. um, but yeah, so obviously Rick and I were playing together with Ink. I filled in for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
And it was kind of throughout that process, because I was doing a lot of backup vocals and stuff like that, that I started kind of getting the itch, and asking myself the question of, like, do I actually like want to try to, like, sing on stuff? 'Cause
Yeah.
I've done plenty of, you know little layers for bands and stuff here and there, like bands that I produced and all that kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
I'd never really taken the leap into being you know, the face of the whole thing, which I'm still kind of uncomfortable with. If I'm being honest. Um, been used to holding the guitar for so long, it doesn't feel totally natural yet.
Right.
Um, but yeah, when I was putting the songs together, the first song that we wrote was a song called Gaps, which was the first song that Octane plugged us on.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was doing some writing for From Ashes to New, which is Maddie's band.
Yeah.
And the song was actually originally written for a different band. It was another band I was working with, and they wound up not taking the song. And I sent it to Maddie, just kind of like, do you know anybody who would be interested in this? Just kind of an open-ended thing of, like, whether that's a band who would want to buy the song,
Right.
a label who would want to, work with a project with that kind of style or whatever, just because I've been a hired gun for so many years that,
Right.
like, I don't really I don't know a whole lot about like that side of things, right? I'm very new
Yeah.
to that area. So when he listened to the song, he was like, is this a project that you're working on? And I was just like, I mean, it can be, you know. And and he was like, well, yeah, if you want to do something with this, let me know. And at the time, I still had I had the original band's singer on it,
Yeah.
and um, I had run the idea by him of like maybe doing something with it, and he understandably was like, I think I'm just gonna stay the course, with my guys. So I was like, well, maybe I could, I don't know, maybe I'll do it. And so I retracked myself on the song, and I didn't tell anybody that it.
Wow.
So I sent Maddie the two versions and a couple other like musician friends that I trust
Yeah.
and like trust but are not close enough to know what my voice sounds like.
Right.
I wanted like review.
Well, it gives you honest feedback.
Right,
You don't,
exactly, exactly. I didn't want to be given the answer that they thought I was looking for.
Right, of course.
So I sent it to a few friends who like know their shit, and then I sent it to like some like casual listener friends, like people who I know listen to like that general style of music,
Yeah.
and could be able to appreciate it without asking like why is the singer so angry. Um, and so I was basically like, just tell me which vocalist you prefer. It was, one and two. I can't remember which one I was.
Yeah.
I just labeled it, like singer one, singer two. And so much to my surprise, I wound up most of the feedback that came back, they were picking mine. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess that means that like I might be at least a little bit more suited to this than I might have
Yeah.
originally thought. So that was kind of where it started, was like Maddie and I kind of talking about doing something together, and he recommended Jimmy,
Yeah.
who plays guitar live with From Ashes to New. And then I asked Ricky if he was interested in doing it, and that was, I didn't expect him to say yes because he's really busy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, he's like, even though he's been playing guitar in Eisenheim for so many years, like he's a vocalist first.
Yeah.
That's always been his thing, and he has his band Hawk, that he's still working on and going to be releasing new stuff for, as I understand it. And so like I was that was just sort of like wishful thinking on my part. So when he said
Right.
yes, obviously I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then we had the only position that we had to fill was the bass, and I didn't really spend a lot of time like worrying about it, 'cause I was like, all right, well, let's figure out like how the writing is gonna go
Yeah.
first. And it really just it became obvious at one point, not for any sort of negative reason, but the one sort of drawback when you decide to put a band together full of guys that tour full time is it's really difficult to get everybody in a room.
I was going to ask that. It
Yeah.
because
So
we've left
Right.
so much out of your story for people to understand how busy you are, regardless of anything. So yeah, we'll touch on that. We'll touch on all that here in a bit, because that just is mind blowing how you guys who are all on the road at all times are able to get together for for an album. But continue on.
Sure. Yeah. So because of that, it became kind of apparent to me that it was like, all right, I'm just gonna keep trucking on this
Yeah.
and keep sending the stuff to the guys to like make sure they like it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they're we've all been doing this for long enough that like none of us are particularly precious about like, oh, like I didn't get to put like quote unquote my stamp on
Oh
the
yeah.
song. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like if somebody puts forth an idea and everyone's like sick, then great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I was enjoying it because I had never been like a songwriter in that capacity before. Like I've obviously written a lot of music in over the course of my life, and I was doing stuff with From Ashes, like I had mentioned, but it's all like instrumental
Yeah.
stuff, and then
Yeah.
I let other people handle the vocals. So it was kind of a new muscle that I was working on.
Yeah.
So I was kind of enjoying figuring that out and sort of building my confidence as I went along. So, within like a year, I think it was 10 songs that I had
Wow.
done. And so it was like, and I was just doing them while I was on tour.
Yeah.
Just like, recording everything in my hotel rooms and stuff. And so, kind of like, before I think the rest of the guys knew what was happening. Like, I was like, hey, so like, I think I got everything, you know? Um, and then it was a matter of like logistically like getting
Yeah.
everybody together to do music videos and photos and like figuring out the band name and whatever. And then by that point we had somebody who was slated to play bass, who was in yet another touring band.
Yeah.
But he's based out in LA, and so it just wound up being something where, like, because I basically told everybody, like, look, I'll pay for the music videos, because like I understand that everyone's just kind of taking a flyer on this. But
Right.
if you guys are flying out here, I need you to cover that. I can't pay to fly everybody out here. And so that wound up being kind of a difficult thing, not in any kind of negative way, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, hey, like I just don't think it's gonna be like feasible to get out there from LA. So it was actually very last minute that we got Jamie. Jamie's a longtime friend of mine. The band that I've had since high school. When we were in our kind of local days, I used to play shows with Jamie's band all the time in
Oh, yeah.
Jersey and stuff. So I hit him up one day, and it was like maybe 3 days before the music video shoot. And I was just like, hey, can you be in a band with a couple of like kind of famous people, like in a couple of days? um,
Oh my
you cool
God.
playing bass, like, and I was happy that he said yes. And I mean, when we all got together, everybody clicked pretty easily and like got along really well over the week or so that we were together. So it
Yes.
ended up being a good choice, but it was definitely kind of a roll of the dice.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
The other guys had said, like, so many bands are like without a bassist these
Yeah.
days. So it's like, look, like we got the core group, like let's just do the videos and stuff like without a bass player. Like
Yeah.
we don't need to have one. And it was my like old school band image OCD. I was just like, I can't not have a guy with a bass guitar somewhere. So I hit Jamie up, and it didn't work it out. So that's I would like to say it's the short version, but it's pretty long-winded.
That's awesome though.
Kind of how the whole band came together.
And it's funny that, or ironic, I guess, that, you're talking about the need or not for a bass player, and two of the guys are in From Ashes to New who doesn't have a bass player.
Right.
Yeah.
So like they're very used to not having one. Although I think recently the two vocalists, Matt and Danny, I think depending on the song, like if there's a song where Danny doesn't really have much going on or vice versa,
Yeah.
the other guy will pick up the bass,
Oh, okay.
play in the back. Which I think is cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, I like I'm not shitting on people for not having bass.
No.
It's like some people get annoyed about it. But at the end of the day, it's another mouth to feed. What you're on
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it's a business, you've got to look at it.
Especially early on when money's tight, like the fewer people that you have, the easier it is.
Yeah, for sure.
And then when things get bigger, the less you have to split with people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's very,
Like
yeah.
there is value to like having fewer people on stage. But yeah, I was just like I really just want, like, I briefly thought about like asking one of the guitar players,
Right.
like, would you mind playing bass instead? Because like I don't mind if we just have one guitar player or one bass player, but I like being a guitar player myself, like I'm sure they would have been cool with it, but being a guitar player myself, like if I was about to do a music video and like the day before someone was like, can you play the bass
Right.
instead? Like I'd be bummed out.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. No
I
doubt.
was like, I'm not gonna do that to them, like they're making their living playing guitar. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that to them. So it was just something that like it was just gnawing at me,
Yeah.
so had to get it done.
Well, it's, I'll tell you, the final product, the lineup that you got, you guys, sound tighter than a frog's ass. So obviously everything is, is working as far as chemistry and all that stuff. Hillhaven though, Where did that name is that a Pennsylvania or an Eastern thing? Where did the name come from?
I wish I could tell you that I wish I had some kinda deep story.
Yeah.
It's like it's almost like the stereotype of, like, this is how you pick your porn name. I grew up well, part of until I was, like, I wanna say, like, 6,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? The house that I lived on was on a street called Hillhaven Court, and it was just, I don't have any particular, like, nostalgic attachment to that house. I was just struggling to find a band name, and I had submitted a couple ideas to the guys, but, like, none of them were anything that I was super stoked on.
Right.
Honestly, Hillhaven wasn't even one that I was like, "Oh, I got it," but I was like, "I don't know, like, maybe that could work." And so I just sent it to everybody because the biggest thing about it was, like, I didn't want it to and we all agreed, like, we didn't want it to sound like a specific
Yeah, yeah,
type of band.
yeah.
Like, we didn't want it to sound, like, too crazy heavy, but we didn't want it to be the type of name where it's, like, suddenly if somebody starts screaming, it's like, "Wait, what's the band?"
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know? So trying to find that kinda neutral ground where it can sort of apply to everything, is a lot harder than it sounds.
yeah.
So I remember putting that in the list one day, and, like, Maddie and, like, a couple of the other guys was like, "I actually think that's pretty cool." And I was like, "Alright, then we can do, we can do, like, the double H." Like, I'm thinking of logos,
Yeah,
whatever, of, like, how we can, abbreviate stuff and make, branding and
of
whatever,
course.
which is also, like, cool
Yeah.
at the beginning, but, like, overall exhausting. Um And, yeah, so that was really it. And I mean, I think a lot of bands kinda wind up with their names that way of just like, it's the one we all hated the least,
Yeah.
pretty much.
No, I totally get it. I live on the street that I live on is called Elmwood. So if I was to start a band now, it'd probably be more like the music that you heard on the movie Deliverance, because Elmwood just doesn't elicit, it doesn't give you that metal face. And yeah, no, yeah, I'll have to rethink that. But luckily, I'm not a musician, and that's why we're talking to Chris Kelly on Loud Unfiltered. Chris, vocalist of the band Hillhaven. It's got quite the history. Chris was also in a band called Galactic Empire, exactly what you think it is. And Chris, it the timeliness of this interview, it Chris was, let's just put it this way, Chris was Darth Vader. And that's got to be the coolest fucking job anybody could ever have, Chris. Now,
Careful what you wish for.
yeah, right. So, playing Darth Vader on stage and everything, and then we've got the death of the voice of Darth Vader. I mean, was there?
Oh.
Did you pause, shed a tear? Are you a big Star Wars nerd?
I definitely was bummed, understandably. I think a lot of people were when James Earl passed.
Yeah.
'Cause that I mean, that dude's just a legend, like Darth Vader or not. I mean, even if Star Wars didn't exist, he was Mufasa, which I think is probably
Yes.
closer to my heart than Star Wars is. Uh,
Gotcha. Yeah, makes sense.
but, yeah, so, like, I mean, I was always a Star Wars fan growing up when we started that band, so this all kind of you'll see this weird trend. I mentioned that Rick and I did sessions at that Atrium studio, it's called Atrium Audio in
Yeah.
Lancaster. I started Galactic Empire with the 2 guys that run that studio.
Oh my God, it's badass.
Yeah, so everything just kinda spans out of I've never lived in Lancaster, but it just spans out of Lancaster for me. Um,
That's awesome.
and, it was just something where Grant, the drummer, there was a he did a drum cover, like, he just wrote drums over top of the Imperial March, and he did a video for it, and I helped engineer the drums for that, and then it was I wanna say it might have been, like, a year later, but it was probably less than that, where he was like, "What?" Like, I think it'd be cool if we, like, tried to put guitars on that, like, I don't really know what that would sound like, but, like, because the whole idea was to just try to make a video that got some views on.
Yeah. No, I get it, man. That's
And,
badass.
and so we were like, "All right, well, we can try to figure that out." And so we were working with Imperial March and the main theme, and um, eventually sort of landed on, like, well, I mean, orchestral music there's a lot of like metal bands put like classical elements in their stuff, so
Right.
would probably be like relatively easy conceptually to just kind of do what the orchestra's doing, just sort of recreate it with
Yeah.
guitars as opposed to trying to write something else on top of it, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So that's literally what we did. We just and
Yeah.
Grant being just like a machine in this regard. He's got perfect pitch and really good ears. So
Yeah.
he literally is able to just listen to the orchestra and then pick out each individual part and like
Wow.
program it on like a MIDI, like a MIDI piano.
Yeah.
And then we just re-recorded the guitars based on what he had programmed.
Badass.
And and then it kind of turned into, it was one of those ideas that I think everybody, much like Hillhaven actually, I think everybody involved was just like, yeah, it should be a cool idea, but you kind of assume that it's just going to be one of those
Yeah.
things where like you talk to your friends about wouldn't this be cool, and then you talk about it for like maybe a month and then it dies and it never actually happens. Um and especially with Galactic, I mean, we were talking about like, oh, like wouldn't it be cool if we wore costumes, and wouldn't it be hilarious if we were on a green screen, um and like actually made it look like Star Wars,
Yeah.
and then they were rebooting the franchise, like episode 7 was coming out, and we were like, if we released it that day, like we could probably get like some good views on it somehow, like through just like Grant and Carson really just knowing some people. um randomly found out that Carson's dad is like some kind of partner for some major film studio,
Oh, wow.
and they were just like, yeah, that sounds hilarious, like we'll do it for free. So
Oh,
our
shit.
like we're walking into this like full legit sound stage, like this massive warehouse that you can fit like several tractor trailer trucks into, that has this full, what do they call it? Oh my God, what's the wall called?
Oh,
Remember,
talking,
the green, it's the
the
green,
like
a
the,
snake wall
yeah, yes, yes.
goes through the corner.
Yeah.
And we had, I'm talking a full crew, like full professional crew with like the jib and everything,
Wow.
like we were shooting a movie. And Carson had built all of these crazy props, and like for the practical effects. And then he found some like effects artists in like Germany or something
Yeah.
online who like built these like 3D environments based on Star Wars
Yeah.
scenes, and we just put the whole thing together. And like the whole time was just like, we're not really fucking doing this, right? Like what? Like, uh and then the video was done, and we were like, holy shit, like this looks like really good, and it's hysterical,
Yeah.
because it's just so ridiculous. And then we put it out the day that The Force Awakens came out, and that was the catalyst, right? Because we put it out at like 3 p.m.
Wow.
Everyone was standing in line.
Yeah.
And so from the get-go, we were like, I think we can probably get 1 million hits on this.
Yeah.
Like, might take a minute, but like I think we could probably get there. We got 1 million hits in like 7 hours or something.
Holy shit.
And then like news organizations started picking it up because Star Wars is trending, right?
Yeah.
Anything Star Wars related, like they're gonna try to get it. And so like all of these different like television news programs, like major news uh channels were like reporting on this, and like putting out articles and whatever, and we were like, what the fuck? um and then the next day came, and we were like, all right, like hell yeah, boys,
Yeah.
like everybody, good job, see you later. And then we got an email like a couple months later. We put that song out in December, I think, and then we got an email in like February or January from the television channel.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And they were like, hey, we're covering the Oscars, and we want you guys to come play like during our red carpet coverage.
Yeah.
And we were like, you don't understand, we're not a band. Like, this is a joke, man. We can't play this shit in these costumes. And they were like, well, the good news is you definitely can't use the costumes because we'll get sued. So like you don't have to do it, but like if you want to try to figure it out, like we'll pay your way out here, we'll pay you while you're here, we'll put you up
Yeah.
for a few days, and like you'll get to play on TV. And we were like, all right. And so we figured it out somehow. So like our first show was on national television in front of the pool at the Roosevelt Hotel in broad daylight. It's the weirdest thing.
Holy crap. That is awesome.
And then out there is where we met the guy that would wind up being our booking agent, and he put us in touch with the guys at Rise Records.
Yeah.
I don't think the band is with them. It's with Rise anymore, but that's who we were with when I was in the band.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it just kind of went from there. So it was that was my job for like 3 years. Was dressing up like Darth Vader on stage. We had to make the costumes like non-stewable
Yeah.
for the live shows because we were actually charging for those.
Oh, yeah.
So we would like jokingly, call ourselves like grocery store off-brand characters. But yeah, like it was a really weird, like it wouldn't have worked at any other time.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. That is so awesome, though.
Right. And I mean, they're still touring, you know what I mean? Like, because like it's a whole new lineup now.
Yeah.
Grant Carson are still running everything, but they're not touring. And so it's a whole new lineup of guys, and they've like completely like reworked the characters and stuff like that. But they're still touring, and like they're still drawing the same kinds of crowds that we were drawing back when I was in the band. So
Right.
it's pretty crazy that like the sort of, not, I don't mean this to like diminish it in any way, but like the novelty doesn't really wear off.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like you kind of just have that core group of nerds
Yeah.
who like they'll see a poster
Yeah.
with those like sci-fi looking characters on it, and they'll just be like, whatever that is, I'm going.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I am one of those nerds. So much so that probably, I don't know if you could see it, but I've got
It's really grainy. I can't.
no, yeah, I've got you right here. That's Darth Vader, and then all my other troopers down here.
Really bad Darth Vader on my arm.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was just, that was a weird time. And then that wound up the gig that I had before Ice 9 and then went back to
Yeah.
and currently have now, which I can't say
Yeah.
the name of the band, but like it's not hard to figure out.
Yeah, it's the worst kept secret in all of rock and roll.
I don't think there's actually like a direct effort to like keep anything a secret. I think it's more of just like being aware of like who is like directly representing,
Yeah, no, yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
so
And I'm not going to step on anybody's toes and be that cool guy, because you can look up a million interviews with Hillhaven and the host is going to reveal the answer. Not going to do that. I mean, there's we're going to have plenty of fun on this show, so we don't need to steal the thunder from everybody. But if you get on Google, just type in Chris Kelly, and okay, now there's multiple Chris Kellys, including
Chris Kelly guitar player.
Yeah. Not
You
the Chris.
Google Chris Kelly, you'll probably get Chris Cross first, and then you'll be really confused.
Yeah, exactly, because that looks nothing like him. But but yeah, you'll be able to figure it out. But
But yeah, so Galactic was what facilitated that gig too.
yeah, Galactic facilitated that one as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I can say that the artist is based in Japan.
Yeah,
We played a show, or we played a few shows in Japan as an opener,
yeah.
and after those shows, we got asked to
So
be in the other band.
that is so badass.
Oh yeah,
And
pretty strange.
I don't want to steal the thunder from somebody else who can reveal it on their next show or whatever. I do have to say one thing though. Can't remember, was it Whackin'? You guys were playing like at 3:00 in the afternoon, and at the time the newest single that happened to be a collab with some disco balls and when y'all played that crowd, I wasn't there, I'm just watching on YouTube, and that crowd was absolutely fucking insane. I mean, all the way back to the people that were at the show because their kid dragged them there and they didn't want to be there. It was so insane watching that whole way. You know what I'm talking?
Festival run, yeah, was pretty nuts. I mean, I've done a number of Euro festival circuits.
Yeah,
Even in Galactic, like, we played some pretty, like, some shows that were, like, bigger than we had business
right.
attending, you
Yeah.
know? But yeah, I mean, that particular song that you're alluding to, gets a very, very good reaction, understandably.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome. It just showed up on my feed one day and I was like, "Holy I mean, I'd heard the song before a million times, but hadn't seen it live. But let's get back to the band that pays your bills. We're talking Hillhaven. Chris Kelly, vocalist, he's guitar virtuoso. The guy's done a little bit of everything, but frontman of the rock band Hillhaven is kind of the focus today. Now, we briefly touched on a few of your singles, and you're releasing them. Do you're releasing them as singles? Are you working on an album, or do bands even release albums anymore? How does that all work out?
Yeah, I mean, so the intention always was to have an album, and I'm sure at some point that will be, like a direct, like, effort and
Yeah,
reality. We have enough songs
yeah,
to do
yeah,
it. It's really just about, like, when it's a new project, like, staying top of mind is really difficult,
yeah, yeah,
right? And so, there's a lot of, like, PR and stuff that's involved, in just I mean, even just, like, all we do pretty much as far as PR is concerned, which, we work with a company called Atom Splitter, and they're
hmm,
fantastic, but we just have them doing, like, monthly press releases whenever a song comes out, and, obviously, bigger bands will be doing a lot more than that,
yeah,
but even that, it costs money. So, just something where, like, but it's just to, like, keep putting it out there,
yeah,
right? Because, um, there's only so much promotion you can do for a song that's already been out for a while.
yeah, yeah,
And so when I was putting this whole thing together, I was talking to a guy named, Eric German, who's a lawyer, like a really kind of big time lawyer in this space. He
right,
represents a lot of people in, like, the rock and metal scene, and it was him who was, like, really drove it home, saying, like, you don't, just release singles, like, every 4 to 8 weeks, like clockwork,
yeah,
because that's gonna be what keeps building the fan base up. That's gonna be what keeps everything fresh. Um, you know, New, like, having something new to give people
right,
is infinitely more exciting than pushing the same thing. Um, so, like, we are doing, like, retargeting stuff for the older songs to try to bring in new people. But like, maintaining the existing fan base is also really important, trying to engage with them and all that kind of stuff. So, right now the focus is just singles, and I mean, I'm already working on the next batch of songs. So, the plan is to just kind of keep, to the best of our ability, to just keep having material to put
yeah,
out at a regularly at a fairly regular interval. Um, and then eventually, we'll figure out how to put a record together, like, properly. But the main thing that I want to make sure that we do for that is, like, make sure that the promotion is lined up properly, and you wanna have merch bundles and
yeah,
be able to do all that kinda stuff, and it's just, I think it's a little early
yeah,
right now. Like, we could make it happen, but it would be kind of, like, hodgepodge and a little bit difficult,
right,
to try to drum up the resources
yeah,
for that. We know the people who could get it done, but
yeah,
just like, well, like, when you're self-funded, you kinda gotta pick your battle.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so right now it's just focusing on singles, but I mean, look, man, the people, I don't really see too many people complaining, but obviously people have mentioned it before, like the new Falling in Reverse record that came out, and they're like, "Oh, there's only, like, 3 songs on it that we hadn't heard before."
Yeah, yeah,
Well, the reason for that, I don't know Ronnie, I've never met him, but I can guarantee you that at least part of the reason for it is because when a song has its own ISRC code,
yeah,
um that it maintains that when it's released on an album. If it's released as a single and then put onto an album, the ISRC code transfers. So when like, translating that into streams, if you put out a song and it gets 100 million streams,
yeah,
and then you do that a few more times, and then you put all of those songs onto an album. Well, day one, the album has however many 100 million streams. You know, so
Wow.
because they laid the groundwork ahead of time. And as
Yeah,
far as I'm concerned, that's the smartest these days. That's going to be the smartest way to promote a record.
for sure.
Um, is to just keep putting out songs that people go crazy for.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, like I remember this is going to sound kind of out of left field, but it does tie back into it. Um, I remember forever ago, the Def Leppard album Hysteria is like one of my favorite records of all time.
Amen.
I'm obsessed with their production and Mutt Lang and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And
It's one of the best produced albums of
it's
all time.
incredible.
It's okay.
Incredible, dude. And like they even made a biopic about it on VH1.
Yeah.
Obsessed with when I was a kid, um and I love everything about that album and everything that went into it and finding out new things about it. Like it's like a big nerdy thing for me. And the like the sort of famous like story about it is that Mutt Lang basically told the band of like, all right, you guys got to do the rock and roll Thriller. Like I want 7 hit singles on this record.
Yeah.
Um, and they did, obviously. And so like I really kind of took that to heart like early on, even when I was writing. And I mean, I still am, involved with this same project, but I have a band called Illustrium that does like technical death metal stuff.
Yes.
And even when I write with that, like the goal is always to like this song has to be like a banger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we've never really believed in like just putting in filler
Yeah.
for an album. That's why Illustrium takes like 5 years to write a record. But and so I have the same like general thing with Hillhaven, right? Is like because like especially when you're a new band and you're putting out songs like regularly, you never really know which one's going to be received better than another one. Like at some point, you're hoping that one of them's going to really hit,
Yeah.
and so like you can't afford to have any filler in. I'm sure there's plenty of people that would be like, oh, every song you put out is filler, right? But uh, like your own, like all you can do is use your own judgment when
Yeah.
when you're putting the material together, and so like for me, the goal is always like every I do my best to write every song like it's gonna be the lead single on a record. You know what I
It's
mean?
the way to do it.
Because like I can't afford for it not to be.
Yeah.
You got to try to put your best foot forward every time. So if that is the approach, and every one of those songs does does well to a certain degree, and then you put them all together, it's just going to be that much better.
Yeah, for sure. It man, I love the fact that you brought up Hysteria, Chris, because I mean, the songs themselves are, they're legendary, and like you said, it's the entire album is a hit record. But it to me, I nerd out as well, like the production value. Like I'll pick out, like I just love the attack on the drums and how certain crescendos, they really do Mud did a great job at taking a really digitally produced album and giving it an analog sound, but having so many levels to it. You could hear every single thing going on. It was not muddy at all. Incredible. Um, that's one of those albums that if you're running PA, at a show, you set front of house to any song on that album. You can set your front of the house, your primary mix, and then of course you'll sound check and adjust. But if you want to just set your main mix, you can do it with that album.
I agree.
We got Chris Kelly from Hillhaven on Loud and Unfiltered with us today. Man, just kind of bouncing all over the place. Chris, I heard on one interview that you did, somebody said it was basically like, hey, describe Hillhaven, or what does Hillhaven sound like? And correct me if I'm wrong, your response was octane. It's
Sure, yeah.
yeah, you know what? It's about as accurate as you can get. I mean, if you hear it on octane, man, that's kind of right down the pipe for Hillhaven, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and it was very much intentional.
Yeah.
I'm in my 30s at this point. We all are. Actually, well, Jimmy might not be 30 yet. I don't know if Jamie is either. Whatever. At least 3 of us are over 30. I got kids, we all have regular touring gigs and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's not really something like this isn't the time usually where people are like, time to start a new band. It's like everyone's like, I got my thing,
Yeah.
I'm making decent money, like, I own a house. That's nice.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to hang on to that. So when you're kind of doing something relatively risky, like starting a new business of any kind is going to be risky at any
Yeah.
point in your life. Um, when that business is a band, statistically, it's fucking insane.
Yeah.
It's a bad idea historically. So like we didn't, and I especially did not take that lightly. Is like if this is going to be something that I'm doing, and especially if I'm going to be involving these friends of mine who
Right.
also have a lot going on, like there's there's gonna be like I don't want to say formula, but it's like there's a very clear goal here. Like we
Yep.
know what we know what the market is, we know what demographic we're after. you know, Ideally, we know what kind of tours we
Yeah.
want this thing to be put on. Um, we're not looking to be one band out of six in a 300 cap room,
Yeah. Yeah.
just doing that for 8 months out of the year. No shade on people who do that kind of stuff. Like everyone's got to do what they got to do.
Yeah.
But like we've been doing things at a certain level individually for long enough now that we're not so naive as to think that like, oh, day one we're going to be in a bus and playing arenas like
Right.
idiot, but like we got to do everything that we can to have the starting point be as high as it can be, basically. So um making sure that things are accessible and
Yeah.
memorable and catchy and all that kind of stuff it was definitely like sort of like priority number one. Like obviously, make sure that we enjoy what we're doing, but make sure that other people can enjoy it too.
That's that. Well, we were just talking about them. That's the Def Leppard approach. That's
Right.
the Nickelback approach. That's A7X. That's the Falling in Reverse. We were talking about Ronnie Radke. He's a marketing genius.
Yes, he is.
It's you've got to have that approach. Granted, you're going to have these little trolls that, oh, that's, once you start embracing the business side and then the analytics that go behind it and how to really fine tune the path that you're on, that's when you become a sellout, Chris. But becoming a sellout is not a bad thing because all the sellout bands I've ever known seem to be doing really well with their bank account, with their fan base. So,
Right.
yeah, so that's the perfect model to apply to, especially when there's so many bands. It's a great way to stand out.
Yeah, and I just think that, look, we've all had our phases as music fans, especially if you're coming up in metal. And I mean, some of us age more with it than others.
Yeah,
But like, that, like you said, the sort of the cliche of the sellout and
yeah,
kind of stuff. I mean, let me just make it abundantly clear. I haven't had anyone accuse me of being a sellout, but if anyone is inclined to, um, I'm currently in the process of building something that could potentially get in the way of my relatively well-paying touring career. So that I wouldn't really call that selling out. You know what I mean? Like that's a massive risk
yep,
to
yep,
put yourself in. And um it's just like I also think that there's this idea that like doing something with the intent of trying to market it and sell it
yeah,
somehow also means that it lacks authenticity
yeah,
and that it's just cookie cutter whatever. And I mean, look, you can make the argument that if you hear one of our songs or a song from a band that we might sound similar to, that oh, they're phoning it in, whatever, based on whatever
yeah,
biases you might have, right? It's all subjective. Um but like, to me, this is I don't want to exclude other stuff that I've done, but right now this is like the most authentic thing I think I've ever
For sure.
participated in as a writer because I've never been the one putting the lyrics down
Yeah.
before. I've always felt very authentic in the music that I've written in the past, but it's always been as a guitar player, and so I've just like that's been my way of like expressing myself. But I think even in the context of, Illustrium, the death metal band that I mentioned, like um I've always been probably the biggest proponent in that band of like making sure that there's some sort of like catchy element to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I like songs with choruses in them, I just do.
There's
Um,
nothing wrong with that. I do too.
right, right. Most people do,
Yeah.
right? So I think I just like burped and talked at the same time. That was weird. uh, Relatively impressive, I think. But yeah, so I think that there's sort of a closed-mindedness to assuming that like the person who's like trying to make relatively accessible music is in some way, quote unquote selling out,
Yeah.
being inauthentic or whatever. um I mean, I see like there's people like who are mad about like what Beartooth's doing these
Yeah.
days, where the songs aren't as sad as they used to be, and it's like, well, that's because Caleb isn't as sad as he used to be, which is objectively a good thing, right? And
Yeah.
I love all the heavy shit too, but like you can't be sitting here telling the guy to be more sad, because you want it that way. So
Yep.
that is like a perfect example of like the songs are getting more, you might call them poppy, right? They're getting more accessible,
Mhm.
a little bit more mainstream, but that is very much authentic, at least from an outsider standpoint. It
Yeah.
very much seems like the authentic way for the band to go because he is in a better spot
Yeah.
personally and mentally and all that kind of stuff. And so like he isn't writing depressing stuff anymore because he's not feeling depressed like he used to. So
Exactly.
wouldn't be authentic for him to go and write that kind of stuff right
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
you know? So I think like that's really important to remember is if the artist isn't connecting with what they're writing, how can you be expected to?
No,
If you don't, that's fine.
yeah.
Go find something else. But like, shut up.
It's
you know?
I'm glad you brought up, Caleb and Beartooth and then the authenticity, and then you pretty much just wrapped up anything I wanted to say about all of it because you were talking about the true connection and because he is being authentic. A question I did want to ask you, um, in mine, I'll tell you mine. Mine has to do with, Beartooth and Caleb. But do you have a music saved me moment?
You know, I don't necessarily know that I'd be able to like pin it to one
Yeah.
thing. I've also been like fortunate enough, like, I have my own like, like depression points and things like that. I think we all do to some
Mhm.
degree. Um, but like I'm very fortunate that I've never been in a place where like I felt even at my lowest point,
Yeah.
like I've never been like, maybe this whole thing isn't worth it.
Yeah.
Right. So in the context of like when people actually say like this band or this song saved my life, like I've never had that moment because
Yeah.
I've never been in like that dark of a place. And I'm
Right.
obviously very, very grateful for that. Um, but when you're like a vaguely heavy high school kid who can't figure out his fucking hairstyle and has absolutely no idea what kind of clothes like would complement him physically, um and like kind of tough to make friends, and you generally kind of gear toward the sort of darker, heavier stuff, which especially like in high school people tend to think is sort of weird, or
Yeah.
at least they did when I was coming up, and I'm sure everyone older than me was even more so. So like there definitely is sort of an aspect of like this stuff saved me because even though it's like it didn't actually like keep me alive,
Right.
but it gave me something to be excited about, and it gave me something to aspire to, and it gave me something to connect with
Yeah.
when I was young and confused and just like trying to figure out what the fuck life is supposed
You're
to
right.
be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and just something to like make you feel like this is like the lane that I'm supposed to be in, and
Yeah.
now it's just a matter of like finding my place in that lane.
Right.
So um in that way, I would just say like heavy music in general would be responsible for that, because that was the first, like, obviously I liked rock music and things like that, but when I first started hearing like Metallica and the heavier things, like there was a much more like visceral kind of like reaction and connection to it, that just continued to develop, and it gave me my purpose
Yeah.
ultimately, like what I felt was my purpose in life. And I think that um getting to adulthood and kind of not knowing what you want to do with your life, which a lot of people have,
Yeah.
um they have whatever their job is, but they don't like, they're like, I don't love it, I don't hate it,
Yeah.
it's not really what I want to do, but I don't know what I want to do. Like,
Right.
that sounds like a nightmare to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like I'm very grateful for everything in that regard, to like, as young as I was, like sort of like having this tunnel vision of like, I know exactly what I think I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. That's so badass. Yeah. I'm going to take a pretty dark turn in this conversation.
That's all right.
Okay, you just mentioned that you'd never actually had one of those actual moments. And, myself being in radio for 30 years or nearly 30 years, um, music has consumed my life. And up until recently, I'd never had one of those moments myself. I mean, I'd heard plenty of songs that gave me goosebumps, and I've had live music experiences, but none of those that, like the Beatles moment, the crying girl holding up the sign, "Your music saved me." Never had that. A little over a year ago, my wife passed away, and the the entire year from August 17th of 2023 through August 17th of 2024, every single, and I'm going to say something that's going to probably shock you and it's going to concern some people, but I will follow up on it. Every single day, I envisioned my death by my own hands. Not suicide. I mean, by definition, it's, that's still suicide. Not, not to where I was suicidal. It's just that I was so consumed by guilt. My wife, why did she die? And I'm here and blah, and all the stuff that goes along with grief. And I felt like there was that depression, that I felt like I was the one that deserved it, not her. So every day I'm envisioning me killing myself, like how, but again, not like me, putting a gun in my mouth or taking a bunch of pills, but it's an out of body experience. I see myself from behind myself, and then I see a third me that is, ending the original me. And it was I had such a hard time. I mean, it felt like I couldn't breathe. And this was like every single day. And then the weekend of her anniversary, the anniversary of her death, her son and I were talking, and going through all the questions, and because he and I were experiencing something that no one on the planet could comprehend. And so we talked about her and all this, and we talked about how, you know, she lived her life as if every day was going to be the last. She didn't know she was going to pass away, but she had a very adventurous spirit. And we talked a lot about how she never wanted to just sit idly by. Let's live. Let's create adventures. Let's create memories. It doesn't have to be something that's expensive. Let's just get out and do stuff. And so we were, that really kind of set us both at ease. We're like, yeah, she really did have a very full life, even though it was cut way too damn short. And then the next morning I woke up, I turned on the radio, or turned on Sirius XM Octane, and Beartooth started playing. And that whole year also, Beartooth, she and I were huge fans of Beartooth, and then some other bands that we were both mutually just like, brought us together. Well, that whole year, couldn't listen to any of those bands. It just,
Right.
every time one came on, I'd immediately change it. Beartooth, I was alive, came on. I was just about to get in the shower and I heard it come on. I'm like, I fucking can't. No, 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 no. I can't handle Beartooth right now. And then I was just like, you know what? I'm already in the shower. We're just going to listen to it. And it was that moment. His lyrics. You know, I was alive. I didn't just live. I was alive, and that at that exact moment, I felt like that was my wife singing that song to me, and she, kind of like, look, you and Angelo went through a year of insane hell dealing with this grief, but just know that she's still pissed off that she was taken too soon, but she did everything that she could to make sure that every moment that she was here was worthwhile. And and at that moment, all the anxiety, I mean, I felt peace like I'd never felt before. And it was that one song, that one moment. And I thought I was just overwhelmed. And, I don't know Caleb. I've never met him, but I immediately called his record promoter that she and I, Patty Martin, she and I had worked together for many, many, many years and everything. And so I had to call somebody that would get it, kind of a thing. And it's so weird. I never looked forward to a moment like that because I never knew those moments truly existed. I thought they were so cliche. But man, music is such a powerful tool.
Yeah.
I mean,
When you're in, I mean, to whatever degree, when you're in a dark place and then you hear, especially when it's lyrics and it's something that like already kind of like got your ear a little bit,
yeah,
like, but more importantly, like something like a message is being conveyed that you're like, you might not be so naive as to think that like I'm the only one who's ever felt this way,
right.
but like you don't connect with anybody else around you because it's not a regular thing,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Like especially like you're dealing with like that kind of intense grief, right?
yeah,
Most people that you pass on the street will experience that or maybe have experienced that at some point in their life, but they're probably not going through it right fucking now.
yeah, exactly,
You know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah,
And so like when something like that just sort of pops into your life, like that becomes like I'm not a super religious person, but that becomes like a genuinely religious experience.
yeah,
You were saying like it felt like your wife was the one singing that song in a way, right?
yeah,
Where like that's when you start feeling shit like that, right? Even though in
yeah.
normal every day you might be like, you hear someone else do it and you're like, "Oh, okay," um, like, but then it happens to you and you're like, oh shit,
Yeah,
like it like when it hits you and you realize like how profound stuff like that actually is, like that's a serious moment. I mean,
yeah,
like the two parallels that I can kind of draw to that, um, when I experienced at the time probably the most profound grief that I had felt in my life up until that point. This wasn't a musical thing, but just a similar sort of thing where it's like, did I just have a religious experience?
right.
Um, had this dream where the one that I lost was right next to me and it was palpable. I don't have dreams like this. You know what I mean? Where you can like you don't just see it, but like you can feel, you can smell, like everything's there, like all of your senses are like heightened, like
Wow.
they're right fucking there.
Yeah,
And the dream went I can't to this day I can't remember actually what it said, but like a movie, screen went black
yeah,
and some words popped up in front of me that the basically all I remember was like the sentiment of like almost like you've suffered enough, right?
wow.
Like it's okay, like it's okay to like to start to feel better.
Yeah,
And I woke up like it completely lifted, like you had mentioned, like all of the anxiety went away,
yeah,
like. And now I don't know if that is a religious experience. I don't know if that's like a feature that our brains have that nobody understands, where like the brain finally realizes like, all right, can't handle this shit anymore. We're gonna figure this out. We're just gonna tell ourselves that we
yeah,
think this now and that'll work.
yeah, no shit.
But like whatever it is, I'm so grateful that it exists because like much like you said, it's just like all of a sudden like it's not like you don't miss them anymore. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? But like it like to a certain degree, it just goes away.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it really does.
forget about it. You don't not miss the person. Like, but it's just like it's just like, okay, like I can live again, and
Yeah.
that's a really like crazy feeling. And then the other parallel that I can draw, mainly just because you mentioned like it always felt like a cliche.
Yeah.
And when you hear other people talk about it, you're just like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like this, like you're telling me you were standing on a bridge and then you heard this song coming out of a car window and you were like, you know what? Never mind.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like seriously,
Yeah.
you're like, but
Love you, brother. I fucking love you, man. I thank you. I need this.
dude, it's the East Coast like cynicism. You know what I mean? Whenever I hear anything like that, I'm just like, okay, like, um, I feel like a fucking asshole.
No, no, no.
But
The cliche part.
so
Yeah.
the thing that always felt cliche to me was when there would be some news that a certain celebrity had died, whether that's an actor or a musician
Yeah.
or whoever it is, like fucking Mr. Rogers, whatever, like, um, and there's inevitably on Facebook, there's like at least one person who will write, "This one hurts,"
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then might say some other stuff after it. And I was always like, listen, like, I recognize that that person, made a significant contribution to whatever field they were a part of, and that you connected with that in some way. And so it's a bummer to know that you're not going to get anything from that person anymore.
Yeah.
But like, you never met them, you didn't know them, you weren't
Yeah.
their friend. So like, does it hurt?
Yeah.
Does it really hurt? You know what I mean? Like, or do you just recognize that it's a bummer, right? And again,
Yeah.
that's me being maybe a sociopath. I don't know. Um,
Today we're talking to Chris Kelly from Hillhaven, the asshole.
Local sociopath, not a doctor.
Yeah.
Opines on your feelings.
No, I totally get what you're saying though. It's
Yeah. And so, but then when Alexi Leo from Children of Bodom died, they were a big part of my like
yeah.
formative years with heavy music, right? And the day that it happened, I was like, oh fuck, like that's such a bummer, man. Like what
Yeah.
a usual thing, right? And then I just went about my day.
Yeah.
And dude, I'm telling you, like a week later, and I didn't know why at the time, um, but I was just fucking bummed. Like
Yeah.
I was just depressed. I had no idea why, and it didn't feel like, because sometimes when you have those bouts of depression, like people like, why are you sad? And you're like, there's no actual reason. Like it's just happening,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It didn't feel like that. Like it felt like something happened, but I couldn't think of what the fuck happened.
Mm.
You know? And at one point I was talking to my wife about it. I was like, I'm just fucking sad. Like, and I don't know why. And it's actually getting like sort of frustrating to me because
Yeah.
like it feels like it's right in front of me and I should know what I'm dealing with, but I have no idea. It's like this like nebulous thing. And I had this like mist clearing. And it was like, it's because Alexi died.
Yeah.
Like, and instantly in that moment, I felt so sorry for feeling like for like basically diminishing everybody's feelings about that kind of stuff, but also kind of felt like an idiot because I was like, I never met the guy. I
Yeah.
only ever saw him play once. It was after the era that I really liked of his.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't even during like the full like the formative like, oh my god, like years of liking that band.
Oh shit.
But there was this realization that was like, holy shit,
Yeah.
I am feeling some level of grief
Yeah.
because this artist no longer exists, right? And like that was a really eye-opening thing to me of like holy shit, like
Yeah.
people do actually feel that connected to somebody, and then so the next time I was in Helsinki, I took the not so easy trip to the cemetery where he's buried. Like navigating that cemetery sucks.
Oh
It's really confusing. But I went and I found his, and I didn't bring anybody with me, but I found his gravesite, and I didn't say anything. I didn't leave anything there.
Yeah.
I just sat in front of it and I just looked at it for a while. And dude, that's the first time I've done that for anyone.
Wow.
Like and even saying it out loud, that feels so silly.
Yeah.
And it's like I've had family members die and I never went to their
Exactly. Exactly.
You know?
I'm the same way with Vinny and Dime. You know, their graves in Arlington. You know, the last time I was there, you know, it was one of those that I'm sitting there looking at it and I'm thinking about the impact that Pantera had on me and on music and all this. And then as I'm looking at it, I'm like, dude, I've got family members. I have no fucking idea where they're even buried. Just I know where they're buried. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with me?
Oh, dude. I know. And you know, it's so poignant that you bring up the Vinny and Dime thing because like that is like a perfect example of one that I was so cynical about
Yeah,
with other people. Because you know, you see so many rock and metal musicians and just random people who like they travel to whatever state. I admittedly I don't know what state they're buried in.
Texas.
I probably could have guessed.
Yeah,
But like people who, you know, they travel there or Elvis's grave,
yeah,
right? And they're like, "Oh, got to visit like the legends
yeah,
today," or like whatever it is, and I'm just like, "Shut up."
yeah,
Like
yeah,
every time I would see that, it was just like it just leave the guys alone. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
It's just like they're dead. They don't need to deal with you anymore. Stop using them for photo ops. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
that was always my outlook on it. Like I was such a cynic about it. But like after I felt that shit about Alexia, I was like, I can't talk like that.
No, yeah, yeah.
You know?
You know, I think all of us go through that. You know, we'll see somebody make that Facebook post and you're like, you know, inside your head, you're like, oh, they're just attention seeking assholes. And that they're trying to turn somebody else's death into a poor me moment and, you know, and I'm like, but that's,
Right. Yeah.
that's
The
the worst.
good news is you found a way to make it about you.
Yeah, exactly. And that happens, but you know, it's the psychopath side of me or the sociopath side of me or the cynic side of me. I've got to get out of that way of thinking because
Yeah.
like you, I've had those moments and I'm like, dude, that is what the fuck is wrong with me?
Yeah.
Chris Kelly from the band Hillhaven on Loud and Unfiltered today. Um, man, I've been taking a lot of your time, Chris, and first I'd like to thank you so much for you know, for giving me your time.
No
Um,
problem.
you know, we touched on the various projects that you've been involved in. That who knows if you're involved in, and
Allegedly.
allegedly, and all this stuff. So you've got all these different bands and lifestyles going on. Has there been talk of having a combo tour that would allow Hillhaven to play, like have Einstein Kills From Ashes to New and Hillhaven on the same tour, or at least maybe a show or two?
I just no, there has not been any conversation about that. Mainly because I don't think I want to start that conversation. Not for any
Yeah.
sort of negative, like, you know, not like fuck those guys.
No, 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 no.
It's just I'm not gonna be the guy that's like asking these other guys in the band, like, hey, can you talk to the people in your band?
Yeah.
Try to
Yeah.
facilitate something cool for our band.
Right, right.
I don't I have hard time with that kinda with those kinda conversations.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, Much like, I mean, you know, right now, like, we're self-managed and that stuff, so when it comes to potential tour discussions and whatever, like, I'm the one that's, like, hitting up, like, friends of mine and other bands and stuff like that about, you
yeah,
know, potential opening slots next year and things like that. And to their credit, like, many of them have been fairly receptive to the idea. Obviously, you know, we'll see how things pan out, you know, agents are involved,
yeah, yeah,
that's no, like, nothing's set in stone, but, um even those conversations feel very difficult. Obviously, you know, I'm sure that, you know, fans of any of those 3 bands, ours included, would be stoked if they
oh,
saw something like that.
yeah,
I'm not going to, you know, fluff up anybody's hopes of anything like that happening, you know what I mean? Like, until otherwise specified,
right, right.
uh, like, I'm just gonna be doing the thing for this, and whatever happens happens. Obviously cool stuff would be cool, but
Yeah,
like you got to manage expectations and things like that. So um No, there have not been any direct talks about it apart from, like, we've gotten the, Instagram comments of stuff of like, "Oh, when are we gonna see all 3 of these?"
Yeah, yeah,
And we're like, "Settle down."
yeah.
You know? Um,
And
but,
that's that's a very, I mean, that's a business-minded, experienced answer. And that's something that, somebody who's been in the industry so long, instead of ready, fire, aim, you're ready, aim, fire. You can foresee some potential things going on. You're like, fuck it, I ain't gonna touch that. With that being said, now with all this experience that you've got in the industry, is there anything that you would tell your younger self, like, what could I do different, or, focus on mental health, screw more girls, do, do, I don't know, more Jaeger shots through the ears. Yeah. What is there?
for sure.
Yeah. What is,
I I think it's just, and this is, I guess, sort of a something that I still have to tell myself is just, like, be patient,
yeah.
because and one thing that I've been asked, like, versions of this question before, and it's usually, under, like, what would you say to, like, other young people as opposed to, like, your younger self?
Yeah.
Um, but it's just, like, keeping your it sounds so, like, duh, but, like, keeping your mind, like, as open as possible in terms of, like, what your career is actually gonna look like.
Yeah.
Like, if you had told long hair, camo short wearing Chris that his first real touring gig, well, depending on if you look at it as Toda or Galactic Empire, it's like, "Hey, so do you want your first tour to be a metalcore tour with a bunch of guys in skinny jeans, or do you want it to be in a Darth Vader costume?" I like 15-year-old Chris would have been like, "I want you to go fuck yourself." But so, you just never really know how things are gonna pan out, and I think that's what's really important, like, and that does tie into, your own ambitions, or, like,
Yeah.
talking to your younger self or whatever. Is just, like, it's really easy to sort of build up scenarios in your head of, like, this is the way that has to go,
Yeah.
this is the way that I'm gonna make it go, and it rarely ever actually takes that.
Right. Yeah.
Even if the band that you're trying to grow is the thing that winds up paying your bills or something like that, um, it's probably not actually gonna look the way that you thought it was gonna look.
For sure.
There's an inherent level of, like, unpredictability in this business,
Yeah.
and a really fickle, uh, area to this business, and, you know, I think the longer you're in it, the more you realize that it's kind of about learning to navigate
Yeah.
that unpredictability than it is about trying to, like, conquer it.
Ah,
You know
that makes
what I mean?
sense. Yeah. Yeah.
I think everyone sees, like, big bands as these, like, machines, and to a degree they are,
Yeah.
because they've had years to sort of develop their fan base. They know what people like and what they don't like, and they know how to kind of, Five Finger Death Punch is a perfect example of,
Yeah.
when was that? And this is not a criticism. When was the last time you heard a Five Finger Death Punch record where you're like, oh, this is so much different than the last?
No, you're
You know,
exactly right. Yeah.
they
That's,
they they and I mean, you get, like, Lamb of God, Amon Amarth, whatever. Obviously they're not as mainstream as Five Finger. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's just, uh, they figure out what connects, they figure out what works, and they keep at it. And
Yeah.
whether or not that was what they thought it was going to be,
Yeah.
might that might vary depending on, which one of those guys you might talk to.
Right. Yeah.
So, um, it's just, like, being patient and being adaptable
Yeah.
is, like, probably the most important.
Yeah. That, along with the patience, learn how to manage your expectations. Especially in my early years, I had delusions of grandeur about everything. And, once I was able to, kind of get my delusions almost in line with, reality, was when I started to, figure out how to manage my expectations, which in turn made me more satisfied with the overall product I was putting out. So,
Sure.
you know, Hillhaven, we've got Chris Kelly with us right now. Check them out. All streaming platforms. You got all your. What would you prefer? How do bands make them? I mean, obviously, hey, give us your money just directly. But how do bands make the most money? How do we benefit you guys the most by buying and streaming your stuff?
Well, we've got, I mean, obviously streaming platforms exist, and we do have, a couple of shirts that are available
Mhm.
through a company called Cold Cuts Merch. We will be putting more designs out later this year, but so buying merch helps a lot.
Right?
And telling stations like Octane and stuff that you want to hear
Hell yeah.
more of it. Real estate on those is much more valuable than
Yeah,
Spotify or something like that.
for sure.
Um, those are definitely, I would say that currently the two best ways, because we're not on tour right now.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Come out to a show and buy merch and all that kind of stuff, but like, we don't really have that opportunity.
Hey, come see us on tour. When are you playing? We're not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Our live debut is going to be in December with August Burns Red in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So
That is so bad.
we will have merch, and all of us will be there, and there will be things that you can buy, and people you can meet and all that kind of stuff. So that could hopefully we'll have more opportunities like that very soon.
Yeah,
But yeah, for now, just keep listening to it, because I'm not. None of us are really focused on the money side of things
yeah.
for this. Like, we just want to grow it as much as we can, and get it in front of as many eyes as possible. So if you don't feel like spending money, just fucking spam a link to a bunch of your friends and hope that one of them likes it.
Hey, the law of averages will play out, and
Right.
one of them's going to click on it. And we've got on the Loud and Unfiltered page, we've got all the particular links and videos posted and stuff. So make sure that you guys check that out. Support Hillhaven. I guarantee we're going to be hearing a lot more from this band, just based on the early singles that you've got out. And we talked about it earlier. Production is absolutely immaculate on it. It's I'm glad that you take that seriously. So many bands, like tattoo artists, they'll do something, their work of art, and then they'll show the world, and the world is like, yeah. And production is you got to set yourself apart, and you guys are fucking top notch, bro.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And the production was definitely a big focus for me. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear some positive feedback on that front.
Badass. Hey, Chris, man, it's been an honor talking to you today. We're gonna get you back on the show at some point again, and yeah, best of luck. Best of luck with Hillhaven, and I look forward to seeing some live footage from that show coming up in Lancaster.
Hell yeah, thanks, man. Hopefully, hopefully we don't make fools of ourselves.
If you,
We'll see how this pans out live.
if you do, fuck it. It's nowadays people have we have short memory spans, so
Sure, yeah, that's a plus.
she'll be all good. Hey, you guys have to check out Hillhaven. Guaranteed you're going to be able to hear them on, Sirius XM, Octane. Call your favorite radio stations, even though many terrestrial stations only play like one new song an hour nowadays. Make sure that new song is Hillhaven. Check them out online and such. And Chris, again, thanks for joining us on Loud and Unfiltered, bro.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.